Guys, I came across this somewhat older documentation of Pipecat where it shows how a frame progresses through the pipeline. So that's very helps really understand what's going on underneath, under the hoods when you define a pipeline. Let's quickly go through it. So this is a pipeline where user says hello LLM, and we'll see what happens here. The pipeline has a user message aggregator, LLM, a TTS, and a assistant message aggregator. The queues receive queue and send queue on both sides, and transport. So user speaks into the mic, which goes into the transport, which builds in the queue, and then these things process the frames and finally goes out to the transport. Um, so the part that's not mentioned here is STT. Assumes that STT happens in the cloud, and when the user says hello LLM, text form frame is LM. Its text frame is delivered transport to the queue, and then the so that the transport plays transcription frame in the pipeline source queue. So that's text going to the queue. Then the pipeline passes the to the first frame processor, that is the user message aggregator. What it does is takes hello LLM and converts into format which can be given as input to LLM. So user colon and the role user and text hello LLM. So that becomes the LLM context and feeds into the LLM. Okay, and then once the LLM processes it, so there's some more details here. LLM frame processor creates a streaming chat completion based on the LLM context and yields the first chunk of the response. So the LLM here creates streaming context, doesn't the word at a time. It outputs a stream of word at a time, and that goes into the TTS. So there's no aggregation of the full sentences upfront before it goes into TTS. And streaming means that as soon as it produces a token, it goes into TTS, and TTS frame processor processes it. What it does is it tries to aggregate the response up to a point it sees a full stop, end of sentence. Okay, and so it sees hi, it doesn't do anything. It sees there with a full stop. So that's the time it tries to empty the queue and processes hi there, converts the text into audio. Okay, so the audio is again streamed to the next stage. So it starts streaming audio based on hi there. That is the first chunk of streaming audio as an audio frame, which is processed by the assistant. So again, this has to put it back into the LLM context, the chat history. Okay, and the message aggregator doesn't do anything with the audio frames, so it immediately yields the frame unchanged. So that's the other part of the interesting part. So every element, every module in the pipeline either eats up a frame and outputs its own, so removes a frame and adds its own frame type, or doesn't touch the frame, just lets it pass through. Okay, so in this case, audio frame is not a valid input type for this message aggregator. It only takes text, so that is sent out to the queue. Yields a frame unchanged. The frames that processor doesn't process should be immediately yielded. Okay, so modules either eat up and create their own frames, or just let pass through the frames. Now what happens at the end? The pipeline first plays the audio frame in the sync queue, and sync queue is what is called the send queue, written as the send queue here, and the transport is watching the sync queue. So since the frame now is in queue, pipeline can continue processing other frames. So there's something about boundary of these two queues found the boundary of pipeline processing. Okay, so the TTS frame probably yields another audio frame. So it says hi there in response to user, and the transport again transmits the first audio frame back to the user. User hears it in the through the speaker. All right, and then now the LLM message aggregator doesn't do anything to the audio frames as earlier. Now the TTS frame process has no more frames to yield because the LLM response has finished. So LLM outputs LLM response end frame, which tells the TTS there's nothing else. So that also, I think, response pipeline to the frame processor usually yields the response end frame. So the pipeline, okay, so it doesn't touch the TTS module doesn't touch the LLM response end frame. It just passes along to the LLM assistant, which now comes into action and collects whatever has been outputted by LLM into the context. So hi there, full stop. After receiving the LLM response end, that's when the LLM assistant message aggregator combines everything. So that's the full flow, and the system is quiet until user says something more, and then the whole flow take place. So this flow is extremely interesting. How and when you're designing new modules, you have to keep in mind that how which of the modules pass in which type of frame, pass through, and modify which type of frame. And there's a latent dependency among these frames, which you have to keep into account when designing Pipecat pipelines.